This video will cover the jQuery portion of the sliding images exercise. Once again, we're looking at this exercise and where we left off. We've already got the HTML and CSS done, so we will be looking at adding the jQuery. We will start after the div tags here, inside of the body. I'm going to give myself some space so that this will scroll up higher on the screen. So after the div tag, what I'm going to add is a script tag. Type will equal text/JavaScript. Source I want to point to JS/ and my version of jQuery that's there. That's all that script will do is point us out to jQuery. And then we've got another script tag, same type. I'll put my HTML, I'll go ahead and end the script tag there. And I will put my opening HTML comment tag there and my closing one here. And again, that's just for a validator so that it doesn't try to validate the script as HTML. Inside of my script tag, I'm going to have my document ready event. So I do my $ document dot ready. Function E. Outside of that, we've got our open and close brackets like that. And then to end it, we've got to put our semicolon there at the end, but you can see that those two match up like expected. And oftentimes this is going to be a little lengthier piece of JavaScript or jQuery. So we're going to put some comments on places to help us keep things organized. So this is end document ready. So now what we do inside of there, or everything else we do, will be inside of there. I'm going to start with a variable. I need a counter. So in JavaScript, our variables are not strongly typed. So I've got a var counter, and I'm going to set it equal to 1. And what that is pointing to the first image. So we've got images 1 through 7. So I've got my counter there equal to 1. And the next piece that I'm going to do is just going to be working on displaying the thumb and putting the thumbnail into the box. So we'll do display the thumb. And I'm going to select, again, use my jQuery selector, and I'm going to look for LIs on the page. So I'm looking for list items on the page. I'm going to do an animate. With a hover function. After the function, we put our curly brackets. Separate that out like this. And then we're going to have an exit part of that. So we'll do a comma function again. So you can think of that kind of like an if-else. This is basically on hover, on exit kind of thing. If you left this off, it would hover and then it would stay. You'd make the change and it would stay that way. So it's hover and exit. So inside of the, when we select the LI, when we're hovering over it, we're going to do another jQuery selector. And in this case, we are looking for li.preview. So that's a list item with the class of preview. We're going to set the CSS, put a semicolon at the end. CSS, the .css here, works much the same as you'd expect, where we've got we've got attribute and value pairs. So the attribute we're looking for is display, and the value for it is block. So when we hover, change display to block. And then likewise, when we exit, change display to none. So let's go ahead and save that. Look to see if we've got any noticeable changes. So now I've got my item that shows up and disappears on hover, right? So on any LI, because I selected all LIs, right? So on any LI, it will do that. Next, we are going to put the thumbnail into the box. So this is a short piece here. We're going to do our jQuery selector. We're going to look for anchor tags that have a class of thumbnav. Again, we'll do the hover event with the function for it. Open that up. So inside of our function here, we're going to have a var, and I'll name that variable rel, which is going to match the attribute that is in, let's come up here, that is inside of the anchor tag. So I'm creating a JavaScript variable called rel, and we're going to point it at jQuery selector this dot attribute rel. So what we're doing is whatever one we're hovering, we're selecting that one, right? So let's just do a for instance here. Let's do an alert and write out the variable rel. And let's save that and come back here and refresh. And you can see that I hovered over 3, and that gets at images thumbs 3. We come back here and scroll up, images thumbs 3. That's what it grabbed, the rel equals. So let's hit OK. Let's go over OK. Let's go over this one. Images thumbs 7. It gave me images thumbs 7. So you can see how that's working. All right, so the alert's pretty annoying, so let's get rid of that. Then we're going to do our jQuery selector. We'll do a div with a class of preview wrapper. We're going to change the CSS on it. And again, we've got our attribute and our value. Now our attribute's going to be background. And then the part that goes in here can be a little bit tricky. We're going to do some concatenation in here. So I'm going to start with the whole thing without the concatenation. So it's going to be URL, open and close, and then no dash repeat, space, center. Now we need to put something inside of here. And in order to do that, we concatenate. And the concatenation operator in JavaScript is the plus sign. So in order to concatenate, we do a double quote, double quote. So now I've got two separate string literals there. So here is a string literal, here is a string literal, but I need to concatenate them together. If I were to put just a plus sign, if I were to do that, it would be the same as if I just deleted this. So that is actually the same as that. But here's the thing, I want to actually place rel inside of there. So I need plus plus and then rel. So I've got URL concatenated with the value of rel here, which we've already seen is going to be one of these, concatenated with the rest of the value there. So I'm going to do a save, come back here and refresh. And so now you can see that as I roll over, that image will change. Now as you saw, the thumbnail was not moving. So the next thing we want to do is move the thumb image over the dot that is being hovered over. So for that, we've just got a series of selectors, and they repeat. So we'll do the first one, and then it's basically copy and paste with an edit. So we'll do our jQuery selector. We are looking for the LI with the ID of nav1. And we are looking at a hover function. So you notice how everything has essentially the same format, right? We do the whatever it is, function, open the curly brackets, close parentheses, semicolon. They've all got the same format there that hopefully you're getting used to. Inside of here, jQuery selector, li.preview. We're changing the CSS on it. So if you want to remember li.preview, just scroll up here, li with the class of preview, that's this one right here. We're going to change the CSS on it. Again, we have attribute value pairs. So we're going to change the left, and we're going to change it to minus 34.5 pixels. Now again, as I mentioned a couple times in the previous video, these numbers are from trial and error, right? So at one point I tried 25, and I tried 30, 37, I tried 30, back and forth till I got it where it needed to be so that it was actually over the dot. So this is li nav1, and we need to do this for all 7 of them. So I'm going to copy this and do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Scroll so we can see all of those. Now be very careful and make sure that you make the changes to all of them. Don't forget one. So it becomes nav2, nav3, nav4, nav5, nav6, and nav7. Those li with the ID of nav1 through 7, those are right here. So li nav1 through nav7, make sure you've changed all of those. And then the only other thing you have to change are the values. This one becomes a minus 14. This one becomes a 5. This one becomes a 24. And I encourage you, once this is done, make a copy of it, and then come back into the code and change some of the numbers and do some of that trial and error yourself and see what changes and where it changes. It'll be good. A good exercise for you. And so now we've got that. I'm going to do a Control S to save, and let's come back and refresh this page. And now you should have that moving, and our placement is, you see the little triangle there. Our placement was trying to get that triangle as best we could over the dot. That's what those values were doing. The next thing we'll look at are the right and left arrows. So we'll do when the right arrow is clicked. Now remember, the right arrow is called next and the left arrow is called previous, or PREV. We'll do our jQuery selector. We're looking for a div with the class of next. We're looking for the click function. and we are, let's see, on the click function, we're going to have an if-else. So most of the time, it's going to just slide the pictures by a little bit. But at some point, let me bring this up. At some point, you get over to here. You get to the last one. And if you click that again, you need to go all the way back to the beginning. So that's what we call a boundary case. So if I keep clicking this, click, 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 and I click it, I'm on number 7, and I click it again, I need to go back to number 1. So the boundary case is catching that. So we're going to do an if-else. We'll say if the counter is equal to 7, else if the counter is less than 7. So this equal to 7, this is our boundary case. If we are already on that one that's farthest to the right, and we click the right arrow again, we need to go back to the beginning. And all the other times, what's in here is going to execute. So let's start with all the other times. We'll do our jQuery selector, and we're looking for the image tag, and we want to animate what we want to animate is the left CSS attribute. So we want to animate the left minus equals 650. Now there's no px on that, right? We want to animate the left minus 650, and we want to do it over a period of time. To do it over a period of time, we do, where my cursor's blinking here, we do a comma, and I'll put a 250 there. And you can play with that time as well. You can make it shorter, you can make it longer, and see how it changes things. So I'm going to put a 250 there. Now realize this is choosing all the images, right? We didn't choose a specific image. This is choosing all the images. After that, we've got 4 lines of code here where we are essentially moving classes around. Now you'll remember up here, there was one that had class equals selected. Well, we need to move that, right? If we click the arrow and we go to the next one, well, the next one becomes selected and this one does not have selected. So what we need are our 4 lines of code. So we're going to do our jQuery selector, and we'll do an li.selected. So the li that is selected, we want to add the class, do add class, previous navigation. All that is it's not adding any styles whatsoever. All it is tracking where we are in the 7 images. So there's no CSS being applied there. All we're doing is we've added a class so that later we can find that class. jQuery selector, li.selected again. This time we want to do a remove class, and we want to remove the selected class because it is no longer selected. We scrolled one to the right. So then we're going to do our jQuery selector and look for our li.previous nav. We want to move to the next one. And add the class selected. Use our jQuery selector and do li.previous previous nav dot remove class previous nav. Something happened there. So hopefully you see what I've done there. We're not applying styles. We're using class names in order to track which one is currently selected. So only one can be selected at a time. So I change the one that was selected to previous nav, and then I remove selected from the one we just navigated away from. I select the one we just added previous nav to, go to the next one, and add the class selected because it's the one that we are currently on, and then I remove previous nav because we no longer need it. So all of that was to move, when we're on the first one, all of that was to move this from this first one to this second one. So those 4 lines, that's what that did. And every time you click the right one, if you click the right one again, it removes it from here, places it here, and so on. Lastly, inside of there, we need to increment the counter. So we increment the counter by 1. So if the counter was 1, when it comes to here, it'll be 2 the next time around. So that is our all other classes. We refresh this, come to our right arrow. You can see, but once we get to the end, there's nothing. So our boundary case, when we get to the end, it's going to look a lot like what's below. So again, it's $. It's our jQuery selector. Again, we're selecting the images. Again, we're doing an animate. Again, what we are animating is the CSS left attribute, and we are doing a plus equals this time, but we are going to concatenate it with a calculation. So I'm going to put in parentheses here to group it together, and then I'm going to say counter -1 times 650, because that's how much we're moving them back and forth, left and right. And I'm once again going to put another set of parentheses to group that together so that all of that definitely executes before the plus does. So we do counter -1 times 650, and we change the left attribute by that much. And when we do that, counter becomes equal to 1 because we've gone all the way around, right? Here we're adding 1, adding 1, adding 1. This is the boundary case. If we hit the boundary case and we're on that last one on the right and we click right, it's going to number 1. It's not going anywhere else. It's going to number 1. So I'm going to save that. Come back here, refresh again, and we're going to click to the right. We hit the boundary case, and it goes back. Okay? Now we're not done with things, so that is the right click. And so I'm going to put a little comment here that says end right click. We need to do the same thing for the left click, the left arrow. And so it's all of this again with some modifications. So I'm going to copy all of this and paste it. So now we are on when the left arrow is clicked, and we are looking for div.prev. It's still a click function. So now our boundary case changes though. Our boundary case isn't when it's number 7. Our boundary case is when it's number 1. So those two 7s there become 1s. So On the right arrow, they're 7s. On the left arrow, they're 1s. So the boundary case here again, select our image, animate it, but instead of a plus equals, we're going to have a minus equals. And instead of the counter -1, it's going to just be 6 times 650. So we've got a minus equal 6 times 650. I forgot on both of them actually. So let's go back and fix that. Over a time span of 50. So it goes quicker. I'm coming back up here. We are in the boundary case for this one, comma, over a time span of 50. So there we've got our time. The counter though, because it's the boundary case, we are on 1. The boundary case, left arrow, we are on 1. It goes to 7. So the counter is equal to 7. And as long as the counter is not less than 1, that doesn't make any sense. 0, -1, -2. As long as it's greater than 1, as long as it's 2, 3, 4, 5, execute these. So again, select our images, animate them. We are again changing the left attribute, CSS attribute, but instead of a minus equals, it's a plus equals over the same time span. So again, we've got li.selected.add class previous nav, selected.remove class selected, li.previous nav. Instead of next, it is previous. So we are moving to the previous one. Moving to the previous one, add class selected, and then li.previousNav, remove class, previous nav. And instead of adding one, we're going backwards. We're going to the left, we're going backwards. We decrement by 1. So we do counter equals counter -1 there, is what's happening there. So now we've got our left arrow clicked. We've made modifications in there that may have been a little tricky or confusing at places, but have a look at it and make sure that you've done everything correctly. Do a Control-S and we'll flip back here and refresh. And I'm going to go to the right, to the left. There I went to the end, to the beginning, to the end, to the beginning. I'm going to go all the way through. Okay. So, and you can play with those timings if you want to. What's left to do is when the thumbnail is clicked. So I'm going to put it up here to match up with what I've provided you. This is where I have it in the code I've provided. So I've got put thumbnail into a box, and then here we're going to have the click function for thumbnav. We need a variable called sign, and we'll set that equal to the empty string. We need a variable called image number, img, num, and we'll set that equal to 0. And we need another variable called move, which we will also set to 0. After that, we'll form our function. So we'll do our jQuery selector. We are looking for the anchor tag with the class of thumbnav. We'll do a click event for that. Scroll that up a little bit, a little higher on the screen. So next we'll do event.prevent default. So that's preventing the default action of the anchor tag. So instead of clicking on it and displaying the big image we don't want that to happen. So we are preventing the default action of the anchor tag. Going to do a variable called ref equal to jQuery selector. We're going to do this, whatever was clicked, this dot attribute, and we want to get the href out of there. So whichever one was clicked, we're getting the href out of it. After that, we're going to do an if else. So we do if, and we're looking for ref.index of, if there's a 1, if it is not equal to -1, then img num is equal to 1. Else if, and it's the same thing repeating. I'll do this one else if here, ref.index of, but this time we are looking for 2, and if that is not equal to -1, then we do image num is set to 2. And that right there continues to repeat. So I'm going to copy this else if and do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we need to change it. So we're looking for 2. This one becomes a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Same thing over here. Image num becomes a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that'll complete that if-else statement there. So we're looking to see if the file name, because it's an href, right? Does the file name have a 1 in it, or a 2, or a 3, or a 4? Now, if you make your folder name have a number in it, this gets all messed up. So make sure that doesn't happen. So below the if-else, we're going to determine how much to move the images. And it's based on which image was clicked, right? Because you might be on image 1 and need to go to 4, or you might be on image 6 and need to go to 3. So we've got an if. Inside of that if, we're going to have some nested parentheses, and we'll say counter minus the image number is less than 0. So if the counter is at 2 and the image number is greater than that, it winds up being less than 0. That's when this executes. Else so the amount to move becomes the image number minus the counter times 650. And we change our sign to a minus equals. On the other hand, move would become the counter minus the image num times 650. Forgot my semicolons. Forgot all of my semicolons. Sorry about that. The sign here becomes a plus equals. So we've got if the counter minus the image num is less than 0, then we take image number minus the counter times 650, and it's a minus equals. Otherwise, it's the counter minus the image num times 650, and it's a plus equals. So after we've determined how much to move the image, we need to actually move the image. So to do that, we're going to do a jQuery selector. We're looking for the image tag. We're going to do an animate. This is just like we've already done. we're going to animate the left CSS attribute by sign concatenated with move. We're going to do that over a period of time, 250. After we have made the move, we need to set the counter equal to the image number because we moved it, right? We were on whatever the counter was set to, now we're on whatever the image number is. So we need to move the counter so the next time we click the right arrow or left arrow, it will be correct. And then we do a jQuery selector. We're looking for li.selected. We're going to remove that class. This one's a little bit easier because we know which one was clicked and we know where we are. We know which one was clicked and which one we moved to. And we'll do li pound nav. Now that's part of it. Now if we scroll up here, you'll see that we've got nav1, nav2, nav3, right? Li with the ID of. So there's a number there. So we do a concatenation right here. So we're doing li with the ID of nav, and then we need the image number. So that will put the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 on there. Dot add class selected. And that'll finish the thumbnail click. So I'll save that. Come back here and refresh. And let's go to that one. And let's go to this one. Back to 2. Over to 6. To 7. To the beginning. Back. And so on. Now I think you noticed that the dot was not moving quite properly. So let's come back here. We get to the end. Sorry, I went to the solution there. We come back here. We get to the end and it stays there and it disappears. So there's 2 lines of code that I forgot. It is in the boundary case. So let's go fix that. 2 lines in 2 places actually. So on the next .click boundary case as well as the previous .click boundary case. Both of those. Down here we move the selected class. Up here we didn't. So we've got to add that. So we're going to do a $, jQuery selector li.selected remove class selected, followed by a jQuery selector of pound nav1 because we know we're going to the beginning. Again, we're in the boundary case of the right arrow click. We know we're going to the beginning, so we're selecting pound nav1 dot add class selected. So we move that selected class over there. We need those 2 lines again on the left click. Let's come down here. They're obviously going to change a little bit. So we're going to have still li.selected.remove class selected. And this is going to become, instead of nav1, it's going to become nav7 because it's the left-hand arrow, which means you are on the first one, you click it, you're in the boundary case, you go to the 7th one. So now 7, add class selected. Let's save that. And then refresh our file. And let's watch this dot when we get to the end. And there it's following us. Both directions. Great. And now we can select. Oops, I think I accidentally clicked and dragged, which is what caused that blue. So now we can move around, we can go back and forth, and it will stay in tune. So that completes the jQuery for the image slider assignment.